Thanks for joining me today. My name is Andrew Baisley. I'm based here in Singapore, and I look after the Southeast Asia business at Asana. Before we begin, for those of you who may not be familiar with Asana, we're a work management platform that teams use to collaborate more effectively and ultimately hit their goals faster. Millions of teams across 190 countries use Asana to manage things like goal setting and OKRs, employee onboarding, managing complex workflows, and delivering on digital transformation strategies. But today, I'm here to talk to you about how your teams can drive success by finding focus and flow in the era of digital distraction. Over the next few minutes, we'll cover the data that researchers have uncovered about how work is getting done or not getting done. We'll look at the barriers workers need to overcome to avoid information overload. And finally, how we can start to overcome those challenges and boost collaboration. If you want to follow up with anything that we talk about today, I'm available to chat afterwards, and I'd love to do that. All right, let's go. We all know that work has transformed in the past few years. First, I want to take a closer look with you at why those changes are happening. The move towards hybrid work has been one of the biggest changes to how we work in decades. But simply moving to remote work doesn't change how we get work done. There's always been a gap between the effort in how people work and the impact that that work delivers. But in recent years, we've found that that gap has actually grown. It's gotten worse. Hybrid work, in its current form, has meant that while the effort to stay connected, to collaborate, especially cross-functionally, has gone up, the impact of that work has actually flatlined. This is in part due to adjusting to new tools, new ways of working. Maybe it's that lack of in-person interaction. To put that into perspective, Gartner research found that 71% of HR leaders are more concerned about employee collaboration today than they were before the pandemic. We also have to look at this crisis of collaboration in the context of rapid digital transformation that's taking place. McKinsey found that in 2020, digital initiatives leapfrogged 7 years of progress in a matter of months. We all know what drove that change. And of course, investing in digital transformation is a good thing, but clearly something is missing. The tools aren't closing the gap that we need them to. So let's take a closer look at why that gap is growing. Modern teams are cross-functional by their very nature. They sit across so many elements of a business, from marketing to product, sales, HR, IT, the list goes on. For some employees, including myself, that's part of the excitement. No 2 days are the same. It's fast-paced, it's demanding, but it can also be really taxing. This complexity makes cross-functional teams dysfunctional by their very nature. And what does that look like day to day? First, you can spend a lot of time chasing stakeholders, getting approvals. Maybe you send emails and pings, waiting endlessly for updates. Time is wasted coordinating feedback. I don't know about you, I can picture myself sitting in really great meetings where we gathered a lot of good feedback and we walked out of the room wondering, what's next? Who's owning this? Who's doing what? Another thing that can happen is information gets lost in translation, causing confusion. I think we've all experienced notifications like these, people chasing information, updates from you. And I'm sure you've all experienced this, and maybe you're dealing with it right now. Your team's working on, maybe you're rolling out a new employee engagement initiative, and you find out that another team is doing the same thing, but on a totally different deadline. It can get really messy, especially managing those deadlines globally, across time zones, holidays, and even working cultural context. So the question is, how do we overcome this? How do we take this complex web of work and turn it into something that gives everyone clarity in the work that they do and keeps everyone aligned to your mission? Well, I'll start answering some of those questions soon. But first, I want to share some research with you that points to some of these challenges and puts it in perspective. We'll look at key insights from Asana's Anatomy of Work Index. This is a survey of over 10,000 knowledge workers globally, including over 1,000 here in Singapore, that we've been running for 3 consecutive years. It's provided us with incredible insights on how work is changing. On average, we found that Singapore workers are using 8 work apps every day, and that rises to 9 with managers. And just to make sure it's clear, when I talk about work apps, I'm talking about switching from things like email to Excel, Excel to Slides, Slides to Word, Word to some analytics platform, and so on and so on. That adds up to a lot of switching back and forth, which makes it harder to focus on work. We also found that in the hybrid world, we're spending more time on email, certainly more time in video calls, and we're often checking our messages after work hours. What this tells us is that the way we're using technology is starting to overwhelm workers. Constant pings and notifications make us feel like we're not quite in control. And it creates what we at Asana call work worries in all of us. Workers in Singapore are losing over 2/3 of their working day to work about work. We found that's consistent across company size and even seniority. And the really unfortunate thing is you can see those changes year over year in our survey, that it's coming at the cost of strategy work. So what's the impact? Well, unfortunately, Singapore's workers are burning out. As I mentioned earlier, the effort that we put into work is only going up, but it's not creating the impact that it needs to. This leads to your teams experiencing burnout. They're working harder just to maintain the status quo. We found, shockingly, 83% of Singapore workers experienced some level of burnout in the last year, and almost 1/4 experienced burnout 4 times in the last year. Globally, among younger Gen Z workers just starting their careers, these are the ones that are supposed to be good at all the context switching and the app switching. 77% of them reported experiencing burnout in the last year. That has a direct impact on your teams and how they're able to come together and meet your goals. When teams are burnt out, all sorts of things can happen. The quality of work obviously suffers, morale falls, retention suffers. The people that are left are less likely to be able to pick up the slack. And I've been hearing a lot about how we all as business leaders need to do more with less. What this actually leads to is you doing less with less. And it's a really vicious cycle. But it's not all doom and gloom. I just wanted to put the real data and the facts in perspective for you all. Let's look at how big the opportunity is in front of each of you, and I think it's a little bit more optimistic. Over the course of a year, we can save hundreds of hours by improving simple work processes and making smarter use of technology. Here are some of the ways that our team at Asana does that. First, we give employees permission to turn off their notifications. We also use calendar blocks for focused work. If you opened up my calendar right now, you would see calendar blocks throughout the week where I know I need to spend time focusing on deeper work. We recommend that you combine your apps and tools using integrations in a work management app to reduce that app switching load. Work management apps can help you keep all of your work in one place with clarity over who's doing what by when. That means there's less need for nonstop swapping and switching between tools, less time in endless email threads, or video calls. Nobody wants more of those, especially just to check on the status of work. We also recommend giving guidelines for a tool's purpose. Of course, at Asana, we use Asana for all of our work management internally, but we also use email. We just use it for external communication. And would it surprise you to know that I have never once received an email from anyone within Asana? That's because that's not that tool's purpose for us. Hopefully some of these tips give you a good starting point to help kind of take back some of that control over your working day. Our research shows that in total, over 300 hours per person per year could be saved by making these simple improvements. Let's move to our final section, helping teams find focus and flow. That's that Zen state when working is actually getting work done. First, let's understand what blocks all of us and our teams from finding focus and flow. As I mentioned before, over the course of a year, we lose hundreds of hours to ineffective ways of working. 147 hours are lost to duplicated work. That's work that's taking place on another team or by other people. 155 hours are lost to unnecessary meetings. Certainly part of that is down to the shift of hybrid working, where we've seen that major uptick in video calls. In short, cross-functional work isn't connecting the dots the way we need it to. There's an opportunity here with all of you to do better, to transform your workplaces and take control. Collaborative work management is the key to unlocking that opportunity. However, research from IDC notes that today's collaborative work platforms are not always used in the most effective ways. A collaborative work management platform helps maximize the value of your tech stack and can help your team stay connected and progress together with greater agility, whatever they're working on and wherever they are. It can reduce the amount of time spent on low-value tasks by connecting goals at the top of the organization to the underlying work that's being done by your people. It can even help you accelerate your digital transformation initiatives by optimizing processes, increasing app security and information security, and even streamlining your tech stack itself. Here's a few more practical tips that you can put into place immediately. Number one, provide context to your team for them to do the work that they need to do. That means having all the information, the files, the documents, and more that they need in one accessible location. Two, it's all of our jobs to provide clarity to our teams. That means deadlines, responsibilities, who's doing what, when is it due, and everyone should have that information. We recommend that you reduce the use of legacy tools like email that only silo information. It adds to fragmentation and confusion among your teams. As we touched on earlier, we should reject unnecessary meetings. Give your teams permission to have focused time. And finally, embrace asynchronous work. That means making it simpler to work at different times rather than always relying on collaborating live, especially when those are just update meetings. This also helps cut down on the app switching that we've seen grow in the data over the last year. Okay, so to bring all of this to life, I'll share one example with you. Gojek is a hyper fast-growing business in Indonesia that you're probably all familiar with. They were challenged with finding a way to scalably plan projects, get initiatives off the ground, and this was primarily driven by lack of visibility into things like roadmap and delivery schedules. They needed a platform that was flexible enough to solve multiple use cases for them. They use a goal-setting framework called OKRs, or Objectives and Key Results. They needed that. They needed planning at an organizational level between goals and the tasks that ladder up to those goals. And they needed just general program and software development management of their roadmap. So by using a work management platform like Asana, Gojek saves an estimated 3,486 work days per year within their company annually by transforming how they coordinate work cross-functionally. Automation has played a huge role in this. They have run over 20,000 rules in workflow steps that can automate things like assigning a task to a specific person at a specific time. Each month, nearly 5,000 forms are submitted within Gojek to streamline the collection of information to feed multiple business units. And we've seen them create over 150 projects from templates, so they don't have to start from scratch each time. For example, a new product launch, they have templates for those. This is just one example. I'm sure you're thinking, with all the data that I've shared and these tips, you're thinking of other things, other examples in your world. These strategies can make a huge difference. To finish up, I just want to share a few key takeaways. As we discussed, today's era of work has created a new set of challenges for us. This is felt particularly by the folks in this room who work very cross-functionally. As leaders, though, we have the opportunity to change this within our companies. To do this, we need to focus on providing everyone with clarity over their work, their responsibilities, their deadlines. We need a single source of truth to house information so that everyone knows what's happening at any given point. By changing how we work and putting less focus on where we work, we can overcome distractions. We can even give people purpose in their work by connecting their work to your company's goals. We can help even the most cross-functional teams, the most complex teams, find their focus and their flow. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said, if you have any questions, I hope this is helpful. I'm around all afternoon. Would love to chat.